One of the other things I was going to ask you about is in Revelation 12, when you have Michael and his angels fighting against Satan and his angels, are they having this spiritual, elusive, or is it a real, how are they fighting?
I think it's a kinetic war using technology.
Exactly.
There's no reason. Listen, the first thing that we need to understand, and Michael Heiser talks a lot about this, the first thing that we need to understand is who the communication is being delivered to in terms of the biblical narrative. Who is it being delivered through and delivered to? And it's an Iron Age people. This is a people who know what swords are, who know what chariots are, who know what arrows are. These people do not know about internal combustion, or these people do not know about jet fuel and propulsion, and they don't know about aerodynamics. These people have no idea about the universe really around them. They have an Iron Age understanding of the world. And so everything is described in that context so that they can understand it. Mm-hmm. If it were not described in that context, then they would have never understood anything that was being told to them. Now, we can still understand because that's in our past. We also know what swords are. We also know what bows are. We also know what all of these things, chariots are, because it's in our past. But God can't communicate to us if he's referencing things that are in our future that we don't have any idea about. How are we supposed to understand what infinitely intelligent being is commuting to an extremely finite being in terms of our intellectual capacity? We have a very limited capacity to understand as it is. So God's communication to man was framed within the ancient Near East context, that Mesopotamian context. And so when the Bible references swords and arrows and chariots, it's not to be taken literally when it's referencing angelic beings. It's a communication. In fact, I go so far as to say that even the cherubim and the seraphim and all that is a coded communication, not to be taken literally. It is packaged information. It's like zipping a file, a folder on your computer. The information, that folder has to be unzipped and the information extracted. And in order to interpret a prophetic iconography, you have to understand the symbolism in which it is expressed. And so when you look at, for example, a cherubim with the four faces and the wings and the eyes, when I was growing up, it was natural for me to think, well, these creatures actually exist, and that's what this is telling us, that these creatures are these four-faced creatures, and that's what they are. It's an anatomical explanation of real creatures. It is an accurate anatomical depiction of living, breathing creatures. That's the way I thought when I was growing up, and that's the way that that's the way we all thought in the environments that I grew up in the church environments. But then later on, I read David Flynn's book, which is really, really a profound book, very difficult to grasp, very profound book. I've read it several times. David Flynn's book and Sidonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars. And he talked about the cherubim, but he did not explain the cherubim as an anatomical diagram of living creatures. Rather, he began to explain them in regard to their symbolism. And my brain exploded. And I realized, whoa, I've been looking at prophecy the wrong way this whole time. We should know that prophecy is symbolic. And it's packaged that way purposely. It has to be unpacked. You have to have understanding. And so I realized I didn't have the understanding and I still realize that a lot of the understanding to unpack prophecy, most of us don't have, because it's ancient, Mesopotamian, and most importantly, it's astronomical. And so the cherubim has the four faces, and it has the face of a man, the face of an eagle, the face of a lion, and the face of an ox or a bull. Well, those are the four cardinal directions of the Mazzaroth, what we call the zodiac. Mm-hmm. But what the Hebrews call the Mazzaroth, same thing. It's the same thing. The zodiac, the Mazzaroth, same thing. and the Hebrews had the Mazzaroth, and the four cardinal directions of the Mazzaroth were Taurus, the face of the ox, were oh shoot, I'm going to blow it now. Taurus,
Leo.
the face of the ox. Scorpio. I forgot if I mentioned the face of the eagle. Scorpio is an eagle, is a scorpion and an eagle. It's represented both ways in the ancient world. So you have the face of the ox being Taurus. You have the face of the scorpion, the face of the eagle being Scorpius. Then you have the face of the man being Aquarius, and then you have what's the last one? The face of the which one did I miss?
Leo the lion.
The face of the lion being Leo. You have the four cardinal directions of the Mazzaroth, and the other symbolism involved. And you go, wait a minute, this is time. What's being conveyed is time. Part of what's being conveyed, because if you understand the astronomical significance, then the prophecy is even more astounding, because not only is it telling you some things, the attributes, there's attributes, it's telling you about the kingdom and about God, but it's also telling you about time, because that's what astronomy is in the biblical context. The heavens and the heavenly bodies are for times and seasons, according to Genesis, right? Mm-hmm. So when you begin to unpack some of this, what you find is even more profound than we ever thought. It's time. God is telling you things that are going to happen exactly when they're going to happen in the future. But we can't unpack them unless we understand the symbolism. And again, I'm not saying I do. It's very, 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 very complex. And we could go on and on and on about that. But I'm just trying to demonstrate to people that it's not about an anatomical lesson. It's not an anatomical description of living beings. It's a prophetic, symbolic, iconographic puzzle. And when you unpack it, you get real data. God communicating through the ages, time stamping his word with actionable data that points to events in the future. And that to me is way more profound than just like a creature with four heads and wings.
Yep. It just reminds me of the simplicity that, I mean, it's Occam's razor, right? We look for the simple answer. And I think when you see Christians at times, they'll see, oh, there was a light in the sky, or, maybe you see the lights over Phoenix, the Phoenix lights. They just throw a label of demonic on it or whatever. But the reality is, and according to the Pentagon report, these are physical things, right? It's not just some spiritual thing with the generic moniker of demonic. That's right.
This is hardware. And so now you think about that. Okay, well, it's hardware. Well, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. You need to start to reverse engineer that in your mind. Hardware has to be fabricated. And the pieces that come together to fabricate that machine have to be mined. You have to get them out of raw materials. And so, and then when you have the raw materials and you have the elements, it has to be designed. There has to be a blueprint. So there's a mind, there's an intelligence. And behind that intelligence and behind that design and behind the mining and behind the assembling and the fabrication of these craft, you have to have in place some kind of a civilization to do this. I mean, we have this idea that things just pop out of nowhere. God spoke the universe into existence, yes, through Christ, through the Son of God, according to the Bible. But human beings have to manufacture everything we have, even our clothes. God didn't just pop clothes. I mean, I guess the first time he did, he gave Adam and Eve their clothes.
They were naked.
Exactly. But it wasn't like some spot near Eden where people can go in and there's clothes on a rack. Mm-hmm. They had to go make them. Then they had to build their homes. Then they had to develop their language and develop their society. Nothing pops out of thin air except for the universe in the beginning. And then, so why would we think we got to stop thinking like that. When we see a craft in the sky, we can't just think, oh, that's some kind of an angel metamorphosizing into no, it's hardware. It's technology. So it comes from somewhere. It's been developed. It's been fabricated. There's blueprints to that thing. There's an intelligence behind it. None of that's anti-biblical.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. We have this knee-jerk reaction that's unbiblical. It's not. And that's what I'm telling people. It's not. None of that is unbiblical. There's nothing in created order that could possibly even be unbiblical. I mean, it's the Son of God who spoke everything into existence in the beginning anyway. Everything was created through him and by him and for him. And so there's nothing that can even be considered unbiblical in terms of its material existence, is what I mean. Now there's theologies and there's doctrines and there's ideologies that are unbiblical. But you can't, if something exists, if a gray alien exists, it can't be unbiblical.
Yep. It is.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Somehow it fits into the cosmos of creation. Somehow. You
And
know,
we
and we
might
may
not
not understand, but God certainly does.